8 mayors in cities south of Seattle are raising alarm bells about the disturbing rise in crime. And you can't hide it. Somebody told me once that you can fudge crime numbers, and sometimes crime numbers don't tell the whole story, but the one thing you can't hide are the bodies. You cannot hide the bodies. You cannot fudge the numbers on homicides. And so we are seeing a really startling trend in shootings, in murders, and these cities are like, look, you guys have to do something about it. They're reaching out to county leaders. King County, in case you're not familiar, Seattle is the biggest city in King County. So they're reaching out to King County leaders, basically saying, look, there needs to be accountability for criminals. They also, in this letter, they referenced 2 state laws that there's been a lot made about in Washington state about the fact that basically simple possession of drugs is just fine. And then also the law that makes it nearly impossible for police to pursue suspects. And they're saying there has to be changes here. Again, it goes back to this issue of accountability. I spoke today with 4 of the mayors who signed on to this to talk about the challenges their cities are facing. Well, mayors, I appreciate you guys being here. I think on this issue in particular, given how controversial it can be, how political it can seem, I think to have several of you strengthen numbers is a good thing. So I just want to quickly, on the issue of crime and the challenges that your individual cities are dealing with. I'm sure there's some overlap, but I just want to get a sense of it. So can we start with you, Dana Ralph, Mayor Ralph?
So we are seeing an increase in crime of all kinds, from property crime, graffiti, all the way up through auto thefts, violent crime, and unfortunately, we've seen more homicides this year than we have in any years past.
Mayor Ferrell, what about you?
Absolutely. From property crime, violent crime, it's been very concerning, especially something that we've all noticed is just in the past year an 88% increase in car theft. We believe due in large part to the no pursuit law that was just recently passed. So it's impacting all of us.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in a moment. Mayor Pavone, what do you guys think?
Yeah, we've definitely had an uptick in crime. And actually, we've had an uptick in violent gun crime. Over the last 3 weeks, we've had 3 separate shootings. All 3 of them resulted in fatalities. So there's definitely an uptick in crime. And like Jim said, the auto theft is through the roof for sure.
And just quickly on the shootings, young victims mostly, or?
Yeah, young victims, not sure of the specifics yet. They're still doing the investigation, but definitely some gang affiliation. The last 3 victims were not from the Renton area. I think 2 of them were actually from the Tacoma area. So not sure if Renton's a central meeting place or, there's a number of reasons why somebody might be at this place in time. But there's a few causes. One of them, we had an establishment that we worked with to make some changes, and they obliged, and they had some late night problems. So that was one of the fixes. But there's definitely a concern around this, and we're hearing it from our residents. That's the thing that all of us have in common, is that our residents do not understand it. They don't understand why we're not enforcing the law.
Mayor Backus, finally you in Auburn, what kind of things are you seeing there? I'm sure similar sentiments to your fellow mayors, but.
Absolutely the same things, Brandi, because there are no boundaries. Nobody knows where the boundaries are, where Kent ends and Auburn begins, or Federal Way or Renton. And crime is up everywhere. We've had at least 2 homicides in one day last week, and we had 2 on early Saturday morning. 3 individuals with gunshot wounds. 2 were taken to Harborview. So it's rampant. The property crimes, what are considered low-level property crimes, are really what are impacting our residents the most, right? Not everyone is going to be involved, thankfully, in gunshots or shots fired, but the low-level property crimes, as they're called, are the ones that are truly impacting a majority of our residents.
The thing I think that strikes me about the letter you guys send, because, there's no shortage of politicians sending out letters complaining about this or that. But from what I know of you guys in my interactions, you're not bomb throwers. You're not out there whining about everything. I genuinely think you're mayors who are trying to do what's best for your city. And so when I see you all come together on a letter, I'm like, okay, now this is serious. Like there's obviously an issue here. Mayor Ralph, when it comes to, I think it's 2 letters now, is that correct? Yeah, 2. When it comes to how this all came together, I mean, what happened behind the scenes where you guys were like, let's sign on to something and send a message, Mayor Ralph?
I think we were having conversations collectively about what was going on in Snohomish County or in King County, and the Snohomish County mayors did something similar. So that was sort of the catalyst of this round of conversations. As we've headed into summer, we've all seen an uptick in crime. We've all been hearing, Mayor Pavone spoke about it. We've all been hearing from our residents. They're angry, they're frustrated, they're scared. The response to all of us is typically, why have you tied the hands of the police? Why don't you want to do something about crime? And for us, it's exactly the opposite. We are 4 mayors that very much support our police departments and very much want our community safe. And then in the end, we're hearing from our police officers. Talked to one of my traffic officers last week, and 3 times in one day, he had to watch a stolen vehicle drive away because of the pursuit policy. Over the weekend, we had somebody in a stolen vehicle who we'd seen earlier, but we're not allowed to do anything to stop. We couldn't pit them or spike strip, couldn't pursue. That same vehicle ended up ramming one of our police cars twice in the night, blocking an officer in. And when we finally got him out of the stolen vehicle, we'd arrested him July 22nd. Guy has 31 convictions, including 8 felonies and 3 of them for vehicle theft. That's what's happening in our community.
Mayor Ferrell, can you articulate for folks who think, well, why don't you just do it? Like, you're the mayors of these cities. You do what you need to do to make your community safe. What are the things that you cannot do as a mayor that you believe the county needs to assist with?
Well, it's both the county and the state. First, I don't think that people have an understanding with regard to the umbrella laws that affect all of us, whether it's pursuit laws, whether it's the drug laws. There's a lot of street level narcotic transactions and activity that literally fuels violence. But because of the so-called Blake fix, where all they had to do was add one word to the law to fix it, now it requires 2 prior warnings before you can actually prosecute somebody, which has rendered essentially all drugs legal because there's essentially de facto legalization. At the county level, I think it's actually very concerning on two different fronts, one on both ends of the process. On the back end, where after somebody's been arrested, there is a crisis occurring at the King County Jail. There are at least 100 officers down. Sometimes 4 days a week, corrections officers are required to work mandatory overtime shifts. Their officers are absolutely just exhausted, and the executives trying to make it sound like this is just a one-time thing in which the jail had to close. Not true. COVID restrictions are still in effect, and it's really affecting the ability to intercede, arrest somebody, and keep them in custody. The second part is something that we've been working on quite some time, which is the filing and disposition standards of the prosecutor's office, and really the lack of urgency about addressing not only the 5,000 case backlog, but serious cases against whether they're property crime or violent crime. It's very concerning.
Mayor Pavone, from the first letter to the second letter, how much time was between, and did the first letter prompt any sort of increased partnership or outreach from the county to address the concerns that were raised the first time around?
Well, it's not like we just get together every 3 or 4 months and have conversations. We're in constant communication with each other, and kind of the newest member of the group here, I can say that we rely on this. We rely on hearing from each other and kind of leaning on each other. So I feel it's very natural for us to use that. The first letter really came out of more of a surprising situation that we didn't even know had occurred. It really was quite shocking. It's something that Mayor Ferrell brought to our attention. But in terms of this letter, we had talked about it for, I don't know, probably a month. We knew that we were going to do something. And then just with the uptick in gun crime that's going on and the violent crimes that are happening, and hearing that Snohomish County is having the same struggle, we decided it was time to do something. And honestly, the most feedback I've received have been from other mayors upset that we didn't allow them to sign on. And it wasn't a matter of allowing them to sign on. We were just trying to get it done really quickly. So we talked to all of the strong mayor cities in South King County. But the other mayors are, not only do they want to sign on, but they're hearing from their constituents, they're upset that they didn't sign on. So this isn't just a, Renton Auburn Federal Way Kent kind of issue here. This is most of South King County is dealing with this issue.
Mayor Backus, there has been, I'm going to get to some of the response from the King County Prosecutor's Office, the King County Executive's Office. I know that a theme of the response is, well, they're just putting out this public letter to make a point. We only found out about the letter in the press. They didn't even send it to us. What do you say to that criticism? I believe it was from the prosecuting attorney's office.
Well, first I would say it's not a letter. It was a press release. It wasn't a letter. And it shouldn't be a surprise. This is not the first time that we've had this conversation. The FADS conversations have been going on for at least 4 or 5 years through Sound Cities Association. Many of the mayors in King County were talking with the King County Prosecutor's Office, explaining the challenges that we have with what feels like a lack of accountability for individuals committing crimes. And so we were asking for them to follow the FADS or the state laws, as opposed to how they are determining what they file and what they don't file. And the latest thing that we've heard is now that there are adults with their first felony that are not getting filed. They're not getting charged. I am 100% behind restorative justice. I don't think that sitting in a jail cell is the best thing for every individual who has committed a crime. That's just ridiculous. But it doesn't feel like there's any accountability right now. One of the comments that we received when we were talking about the FADS was, well, if there's someone you really want us to hold, just contact us and let us know. Well, the fact that we arrested them and sent the charges, felony charges to you, should be an indication that we want them held and we want them charged. So I found that a little bit condescending, if you will. But again, we still want to work with the county executive. I think we all have a good relationship with Dow and his office. We want to work with the prosecutor's office, with Dan Satterberg. But I just don't feel like they're listening to us. I saw on the news that the executive's office is willing to work with mayors of cities who aren't hanging on to obsolete ideas. Well, I don't think accountability is obsolete. And if it is, then I'm in the wrong line of business.
Let me, since you brought it up, read that statement from the King County executives talking about, you've mentioned the word condescending. I know this isn't your opinion, but my opinion is that this is incredibly condescending. They said, we will continue to partner with any government committed to working productively to deliver safety rather than clinging to obsolete practices and mindsets that no longer keep our communities safe. Mayor Ralph, are you clinging to obsolete practices and mindsets that don't keep communities safe?
Apparently so. The gentleman that I referenced in the example from over the weekend, if the obsolete idea of keeping him in jail had occurred, he would not have endangered the lives of residents in the neighborhood, rammed 2 of our police cars. He wouldn't have been able to steal another vehicle out of Tacoma. So if that's obsolete, then yes, I'm clinging to it. I also have been very, very vocal about the fact that restoration is always the key, but it takes different forms for different people. There are some people that need to be in detention while they are going through that restorative process, whether they're adults or juveniles. Turning them around and pushing them back out the door so they can commit more crime in hopes that they get services at some point does not make sense, nor does it keep our community safe.
Mayor Pavone, are you obsolete? You have an obsolete idea of public safety?
Yeah, we had a conversation about this over the weekend. This statement is very similar to what I ran into around the Red Lion hotel issue, where a condescending statement, putting you down, is sent out there, and then it's never challenged by the media. They never really dig into really what's being said. They're just patting you on the head and telling you to, go sit in the corner here. And I think that if you really, explore what they're saying there, I don't know that the residents are think that accountability is obsolete. I just don't think they do. I think that at the end of the day, I think there's a sense that the politics that are going on in Seattle are not affecting the outlying cities. Well, this is an example where it's just not true. I mean, they are kind of swaying towards the Seattle model of justice, and the residents in the outlying cities don't realize that. They think, oh, we're out here in Renton, and that's Seattle. They do things differently, but it's King County. They oversee all of us. So, whether I'm obsolete, I don't know. I mean, restorative justice, absolutely. One of the things that has to happen if there's going to be deferrals or programs, then it has to be mandatory. It has to have some accountability to it, and it has to be available. Just saying that we're going to divert somebody and then not having the programs there or the services to provide, it's basically just get out a free jail card.
Mayor Ferrell, I do want your thoughts on the same quote that I just read and that Mayor Backus brought up about, the idea that what you guys want is clinging to obsolete ideas of public safety. So I'll have you weigh in on that. And then I want to address with you a portion of a statement from the King County Prosecutor's Office that I think was aimed at you. So first on the obsolete front.
Well, I don't think justice and accountability ever goes out of fashion or style, and this is a classic deflection. Pick one thing out of our statement, or just try to say that we're out of step, or that we've got some anachronistic view of justice. I think everybody deserves and wants to feel safe and feel like there's justice and accountability in the system. And I can tell you that where we're really alarmed and concerned is the lack of both. I mean, you've got to have a way to track people. That's what this whole restorative community pathway thing, people should know that there is no case number. There is no, these people don't appear in front of a judge ever. There's no track back to figure out even if they showed up. And even if they do show up, we have no idea what they do. So I say that's not a diversion program. That's a looking the other way program. So and that's really what it is. So it's unacceptable. And they need to realize that they work for the same people that we do, and we work for the people of this community, and it's our number one responsibility to keep them safe. And that's not a matter of going in and out of style. That's our job.
A spokesperson for the King County Prosecutor's Office in a statement essentially questioned perhaps the motivation of sending the letter out. Mayor Ferrell, this is not a campaign interview. It was not booked as a campaign interview, but you are running for prosecutor. So can you address people who might be critical, saying, oh, well, that's old Jim Ferrell trying to get attention to his campaign?
Well, I think these issues predate, this campaign. And, I think that ultimately these issues speak for themselves. I mean, it is something that it's our great responsibility to make sure that our cities account for the safety of its citizens. And we've got policies in place that are not being addressed. There's nothing political about that. It's our job. It's the way it is. And so, together, these cities, just the four of us, represent over 500,000 people. And if we tack on those other folks, there are a great deal of people that are concerned about the direction this is going. And that's just, again, a classic deflection. So that project is ongoing, but that doesn't negate the fact that these issues are real and they're concerning to a great number of people.
Mayor Backus, what would be a response from the county executive or from the prosecutor's office that would be satisfying to you?
Well, first I want to just kind of merge onto what Mayor Pavone had said, but in Seattle, I think we've seen some desire for accountability as well in the last year's elections. And I support what Mayor Harrell is doing in his accountability and the traction that he's getting in their city attorney as well. So I think there's some hope there too. I do appreciate what Mayor Harrell is doing there. The response that we've been looking for when we've had the conversations with them in the past and the acknowledgements. Really, I would like to see us sit down together and talk about what can be done. Not just, oh, they're pushing back, they just don't understand, they don't understand the new ways of doing things. I think we're all open to new ways of doing things. And although sometimes I think we just need to maybe look at the programs that are already in place, see what's working with those and what isn't, and redefine those instead of always jumping off onto something new. New, I know, is always more exciting. It provides for a press conference, but that isn't what we need. We need stability. We need accountability. I have 3 words that I have behind me that I use in every decision I make, and that's compassion, accountability, and community. And I think those things are being lost for a majority of our community. Our communities of color, which I know some of these new ideas are intended to make safer. I'm hearing from them, they're not feeling any safer. In fact, they're feeling less safe. So this needs to be a discussion with not just those really loud voices to the far left or to the far right. It needs to be those of us that live our lives in the middle and want common sense approaches and accountability for everyone. Our communities are not safe right now.
Mayor Backus, that was like a commercial for Undivided, so I'll send you your check later.
Thank you.
Yes. Mayor Pavone, to what extent, there's 2 pieces of legislation and really issues that are mentioned in the release, and that is the issue of the pursuit law and also the bill that really makes drug possession sort of a non-issue, I guess, under law. To what extent have you been in touch with your legislative delegation, and do you believe that they're amenable to addressing those things in the upcoming session?
Well, yeah, last year I had a number of conversations. I think we all did with the change around the Terry stops and trying to have that legislation adjusted. So far, I think we're reached by one legislator reaching out to us. Salmon, I think his name is.
Jesse Solomon.
Jesse Solomon, yes. And I appreciate that he did reach out to us wanting to have a conversation and work on this issue. So, and that for sure is the intent in this upcoming session, is to have these conversations around Blake and around pursuits. We're not crying that we have the answers. But we do have the issue and the problem, right? And it needs to be addressed. It needs to be re-examined. And a couple of things that Nancy said, and I guess I probably should preface, I do appreciate the effort that Mayor Harold is doing in Seattle to provide accountability. That wasn't a slam on Seattle for sure. And in terms of our approach being racist is another narrative that's out there, and I find it humorous. I mean, Renton, Kent, and Auburn are the most diverse cities in the state and even in the country, and so we represent these people. And what they're telling us is they don't feel safe. This is not a race issue. This is a neighborhood public safety issue, and like all 3 of my colleagues said, it's our number 1 job. It's the thing that we are elected to do, is to provide public safety.
Mayor Ralph, one question for you before I kind of end with a round robin here. Governor Inslee has had a little bit of a change of heart on public safety. My characterization doesn't necessarily have to be yours, but he came out and said 2 years after the conversation that he was against police defunding. He came out recently and they announced this effort to expand recruitment and training for potential, future members of law enforcement. Do you feel like between that and what's happening in Seattle under Mayor Harold that there's like a glimmer of hope, that there's sort of a change of course?
I think the glimmer of hope comes from the work that honestly the 4 of us are doing to retain officers and to recruit officers. It is something that none of us ever did. None of our cities had a decry are a defund cry. We all did everything we could to support our officers through the last couple of years, and we are all doing everything we can to recruit and retain our departments, because we know how important it is to our communities that we have a fully staffed police department that can serve them in a way they need to. It is hopeful to me that we're starting to hear those other voices come back, because maybe then the message becomes that Washington isn't an anti-law enforcement state. We've all got stories of some of our very best officers leaving to go other places because they don't want to live in a place that they're not supported and appreciated. So I'm hopeful that maybe the message is changing at the statewide level. And I know that at our level, we're going to continue to do everything we can to retain our good officers and attract new ones.
So let's end with the same question for everyone. We'll strip away any, semblance of politics or anything like that. The heart of what you're doing, the heart of what you wrote. Mayor Ferrell, if the county executive and the prosecutor or the governor are listening, what are you trying to accomplish for your city?
Well, that's a great question. And what we just need to start moving in the right direction, whether it's jail capacity and making sure that we can book people at the Regional Justice Center, or that we get a jail that's fully staffed, that we can make sure that when arrests are made, that they at a minimum have the ability to be seen by a judge, that we have the ability for our officers at the statewide level. I would want the governor to lead on making sure that we have reasonable drug laws in place, reasonable pursuit laws in place. And so, and that when we bring a case to the King County prosecutor, that, where there's probable cause for a felony, that it's given its due review and filed. And so that's really what we're asking for.
Mayor Backus, same question. What are you hoping to accomplish for your city through this?
So the accountability piece is critical. I know you're going to get tired of us using that word, but it really is what this is all about. Again, the restorative justice, we have our own community court that we started and paid to put in place. We have a King County District Court judge who is there, our city prosecutor, and the public defender, and it's holding people accountable. There's one conversation I had with Dan Satterberg where I was telling him about our restorative justice plan, and he said, "Why do you have to have a judge there?" Why do I have to have a judge there? Because it's community court, and that's the model, and it's working. We've got several graduates now that have completed what the judge is expecting of them. They've gone either through treatment, assessment, they're getting their license, their ID, they're being able to get into housing, they're being held accountable, and they're doing great. That's what I want to see. And if we do restorative community pathways, then let's make sure we know that the juveniles that are involved are being supported and being held accountable. And that's just that's not a factor in this program right now. And Mayor Pavone and I all sit on the regional policy committee, and we've asked for some type of metrics on how successful this program is. We have yet to see them, and we were told we wouldn't be able to find out if the juveniles were arrested in our jurisdiction, which program they were referred to, or even how they're doing. So I find that kind of like an open checkbook, and we can't afford to open checkbooks.
Mayor Pavone, if I were Dow Constantine or Dan Satterberg and you were just speaking from the heart, what are you trying to accomplish for your city?
Well, a couple of things. The first is getting on the same page. It definitely feels like the county has a direction they are looking to head. The courts and public safety, and it's being trickled out. We're the boiled frog, and we're finally coming around to feeling the temperature, and our residents are feeling it. It's like things are slowly changing in a direction that isn't consistent with the word that we've been using, accountability. The other thing is this idea that we're dinosaurs and our thinking is archaic is not true. I mean, all of us are supportive of restorative justice. We've got 2 judges in Renton. We've got a community court, and I just met with them last week. They came up with a program where teenage moving vehicle violations are they're looked at, and they have their own teenage court. So kids from high school get a program learning about the courts and justice and government, and these kids can get a deferred program through it. I mean, that's a creative way of thinking about a problem. Just instead of just, slapping on the wrist or giving a fine and going away. So I think we're all in the mindset that there are things that need to change so that there's not this, crib to prison pipelines. We're all for changing it, but it has to be done in a way so that our residents are still safe at the same time and people aren't dying in the street from gunshots.
Mayor Ralph, we'll end with you. Last word. What's your hope for your city and Kent?
All right. So I think it all comes down to that safety piece. I want my residents to feel safe when they're out in the community, when they're sleeping in their homes at night. And I think the thing I would like people to sort of take away from this is it's all levels. We've got to have responsible laws that are coming out of the legislature. So that means fixing Blake and fixing pursuits. It means that we all have to be fully staffed in our police departments so our officers can respond and do the right thing in the community and provide that community policing that everybody is asking for and that they quite honestly want to provide. It means access to take people to jail so that they can stay there waiting to see the judge. And then it also means the judges being accountable and not just spinning them out and putting them back out into the street, especially these repeat offenders, because it's not keeping communities safe. All of these things are and conversations, right? None of us are saying it needs to be one way or the other. We're saying we need to bring all these pieces together because restorative justice is an important piece of this. But at the same time, if you've already got 8 or 9 or 10, 12 felony convictions, there's a reason that something in this piece isn't working. So we've got to look at a different path. And right now, we're all living under some grand experiment all the way from the legislature through our court system. And this experiment is not working.